we're ready to get started. Sarah, are we good? Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Chicago. Okay, February 16th, 2016, 7:25 in the morning. So picture this. It's a Tuesday morning right after President's Day weekend in New York City. Now, it's been a bitter cold weekend. The temperatures the day before on Monday dipped down to the single digits. Great for everybody who loves to go upstate and ski. 7:25 in the morning, Robert, the managing partner of a law firm in Lower Manhattan, gets off the elevator on the third floor of his office building. It's actually his office building right there on Broadway. Unlocks the door, walks in, and he hears something. Doesn't know what it is, walks down the hall towards the sound, and he stops dead in his tracks. Over the weekend, a pipe had burst in the ceiling above his office. There was water everywhere. The office was obviously not usable. Turns around, emails a staff of about 20 employees, work from home for the next couple days, walks out the building, gets in his car, drives home, cool, calm, and collected. Welcome everybody to Chicago. My name is Tabush. Just a little bit about me. Been in the IT world basically since I was about 10 years old, and I learned how to fix Nintendo in the VCR when they didn't work. Lived in New York pretty much my whole life. Our firm is based in New York City. We've got 28 full-time employees. Forgot about that. We provide managed IT, private cloud, and latest is desktop as a service. Like I said, 28 full-time employees, where we like to think of ourselves as small enough to care but big enough to service. Owner-operated, self-funded. We're driven really by our passion and our mission, not by any outside investors or goals that we need to meet or other people we need to please. And proud to say that we've actually been doing cloud since, I think this slide may be inaccurate, I think since 2003, before cloud was even a term. All right. Enough about us. It's good to be here today. I was really nervous coming out of New York all weekend. They were predicting like snowmageddon or snowpocalypse. The world was going to come to an end. I was in ShopRite Monday evening with my wife at 10 p.m. and literally there were people preparing for a nuclear war. Fortunately, it wasn't so bad. It was what I like to call Snowgate. My flight got out yesterday, and here I am. Okay, so before we get to the law firm of tomorrow, we like to think about the future a little bit. And every so often, we think about the future, we look at the future, and there's all sorts of different things that come to mind. It's kind of funny. Sometimes think about the future and everything is all rosy and green, the skies are blue, everything is perfect, we've got flying cars and hoverboards and all sorts of cool inventions. And sometimes the future is like a complete disaster with cyborgs ruling the world and humans don't even exist anymore. What I can say that is really cool is that we've got things like Amazon, Alexa, and FaceTime right now. So we're kind of getting there. We definitely don't have the flying cars yet. Getting back to business. So the law firm of tomorrow. So what is the law firm of tomorrow? Before we get to that, I want to talk a little about the law firm of today. So the law firm of today, as most of you guys know, obviously has associates, partners, paralegals, matters, clients, and of course, who could forget, billing. Now, it also has a lot of the challenges that we face today. And before I get into it, just so I could kind of get to know you guys a little bit, show of hands, how many people here are from firms that are like 1 to 5 people, roughly? Okay, good. Any in the 5 to 20 range? Right. Anybody really big, like in the 3 digits, hundreds? Okay, great. So, the law firms of today have all that great stuff that I mentioned. Of course, they've got some things that aren't so great also. So we've got all sorts of headaches, and a couple of them are kind of getting off the screen, but you can understand what it is. And unfortunately, these are the things that get in the way of the clients, the matters, the work, and the billing. Now, how many times has there been some sort of IT issue, which causes downtime, frustrations, costs to fix it or upgrade it? And of course, then there's a post-mortem that you may get from your provider a day or two later, and I've seen dozens of those post-mortems. Oh, we're so sorry about the problem, the redundant subsystem sublayer of the fault-tolerant incremental this and that, and they just figure they throw enough jargon at you that you don't understand, you'll believe them. I've seen too many of those, but unfortunately, that's what it is. Or maybe, you call your provider, hey, why did we have this outage? I thought we just upgraded or we just fixed. And they'll say, well, there was another thing that you didn't do, the proposal that we emailed you, you didn't see it. And this is a reality. And why do things like this exist? Because you guys are lawyers. You're professionals, you're great at what you do, but you've got a lot more to worry about than the stuff on, the computer on your desk, the server in the closet, all this software and upgrades and licenses that you don't really even understand what it is. So you hire a service provider to support you, to manage your systems, and they tell you they're going to do it all, they're going to be proactive, they're going to monitor things, they're going to respond quickly, and most of the time, they do that stuff, and they do a really good job. But because these are your systems, your servers, your desktops, your software, and they live in your office on hardware that you guys own, things don't always work as planned. Redundancies may not kick in when they need to. Backups may have an issue, and you come to do it. Backups may be great, but restores are not that great sometimes. And again, there's always something. There's always an upgrade. There's always a project. There's always an addition. And sometimes it kind of never ends. No matter who services your systems, whether it be an in-house in-house IT employee or an outside provider, they're still your systems. And as a fellow business owner, I can say I know what it's like to try to balance client work, operations, finance, HR, cash flow, and everything else in between. It's what we call reality. And it's not just IT. When you own anything, you're responsible for it. For example, if you're driving in the morning and you get a flat tire, you've got to pull over, you've got to either call roadside or AAA or change a tire yourself, get your hands all black and greasy and everything, and okay, it's your car, you've got a spare in the back or something, but the bottom line is, you probably just missed your first 2 or 3 morning appointments. That's ownership. What I've just said is nothing novel, and the reality is that for small firms, and by small we typically like to figure under 50 attorneys, IT, unfortunately, is not nearly as perfect, excuse me, not as perfect as the rosy picture that we're painted sometimes. So that's today. Now what I want to talk about is how do we get from today, where we own, manage, and sometimes support our own systems, to tomorrow, where we just use everything and we don't worry about it. But first, how did we get this whole mess of complexity that we have today? James Burke, the famous British historian, or famous for science guys like me, once said, you can only know where you're going if you know where you've come from. So, give a little brief history on IT. Let's click to get everything in here first. Okay, so, we got computers in the early 1990s. Maybe it was just a few computers at first. Then we connected them with networks from companies like Novell, whoever remembers that stuff, so we could share files without using things like these floppy disks. There we go. Once in a while, we'd get online for a few minutes at a time by dialing up with a dial-up modem. And I used to have a sound effect of that modem screeching noise, which brings chills to my mind when I think about it. But I cut it out because it's too cumbersome to get the sounds working these days. We got online for a few minutes with our dial-up modems while they'd hog up the phone line. Usually it was things like Prodigy, AOL, CompuServe. When I speak to, I've done this presentation a few times to 8th and 9th graders, and they don't even know what CompuServe and AOL are, or they don't know it as AOL, America Online. In the early 2000s, things started to change a little bit. Servers became a little bit more affordable, dial-up got replaced with things like DSL, and all of a sudden, we were online all the time, not just for a few minutes at a time. Networks also got more affordable, so businesses started to connect each other's computers, get some networked applications, share data, share files. It was maybe 20, 25 years ago that not every desk in an office had a computer on it. I remember in 1994, the place where I was working had one computer on a rolling cart to share between 8 people. And literally, like when it was Thursdays, the payroll lady would grab the computer, unplug it, wheel it over her desk, plug it back in, and do payroll. And then, the accounts person would take it, wheel it over, dial up to the bank. And every so often, if you hit a little bump or something, some of the little cards inside would unseat, and all of a sudden something's not working, and it was my job to open it up. I think it was a Gateway 2000 at the time, and pop those little cards back into place. But it was one computer. There were a lot of typewriters back then. They had a lot of typewriters in the office. Today, it's kind of like, today, I don't know any office that every desk doesn't have a computer. My parents sometimes tell me how when they were growing up, they had one telephone in the house. Not one line, one phone. And sometimes it sat like, sorry?
Party line, too.
Yeah, party line too. And it was one phone. Now, I don't know, how many people here have more telephones than humans in the house? Yeah. So, back to business. Once we had a computer on every desk, we're suddenly doing more and more on the computer and less off the computer or on paper. Now, since we're doing more and more, these computers become a lot more important to our day-to-day lives. We have to back them up. Maybe we need to access them once in a while when we're out of the office with something like a Citrix or a LogMeIn or a VPN. Since they're mission critical, we can't afford for them to be down, so we hire people or companies to support them for us. Things like viruses and CryptoLocker go around, and unfortunately, those are a huge threat. We have to secure against them. Things change quickly. As soon as you finish installing some new piece of hardware, it's outdated already. You've got to upgrade, of course. We accumulate more and more data. So all of a sudden, our hard drives aren't big enough, or our backup systems aren't big enough. Or our backup systems are big enough, but we realize, oh, that's just a backup. Maybe we want to get disaster recovery or business continuity. Legal ethics, compliance introduces a whole new set of requirements and concerns that everybody has to deal with. And that's kind of how we end up with such a complex situation. How many clicks do I have to do here? Like you have here. So for the last 30 years, business IT has been about owning the assets. The hardware, the software, the systems, you bought them, you own them, you renewed the warranty on them, you repaired them, replaced parts every so often. And things were pieced together and slowly band-aided over time as our needs changed. And unfortunately, you probably get a stream of bills that you don't even know what the heck half of them are for, but it's technical, it looks okay, it's been there for a while, so you pay it. It's what it is. And all this consumes time and gives us headaches. And I don't know about you guys, but I have very little time and too many headaches as it is. I don't need any more of those in my life. So that's where we're at today. And we'll pause and get back to this in a minute. The big buzzword, as I'm sure you all know today, is cloud. Email, phone systems, document management, time and billing, financials, file sharing, everything these days pretty much is available in the cloud. And from what I saw out on the expo floor, almost every vendor's offering is a cloud offering, or it has something to do with the cloud. But why is this? Why does it all of a sudden make sense to put parts of our business in this mysterious place called the cloud? Show of hands, who actually knows where the cloud is? Okay, so I will say this. First of all, it's not in Oz, it's not in Neverland, and it's not up there in the sky. It's in Seattle. Well, parts of it are in Seattle. Yes, they are. The cloud is in data centers, like these right there. This is actually a picture of one of our data center buildings that we work out of. The cloud is in these data centers, which are sort of like server vaults built to house servers, to house IT equipment, and never go down. They've got gobs and gobs of fiber optics coming into them. They've got multiple power feeds, power lines coming in from all directions, diesel generators, figure that out one of these days, battery backup systems, redundant cooling systems, and then just rows and rows and rows of server racks like these. These buildings, the one we're in was built actually in 1988, originally to house mainframes, and then it was sort of, I don't want to say retrofitted, but now there are no mainframes left in there. But most of these buildings were built in the 90s, or some of them were retrofitted, like old warehouses or shopping centers converted over. They actually exist all over the country. A lot of them are in major metropolitan areas, such as New York, LA, Chicago, Seattle, because that's where a lot of the internet sort of comes together. All the different fiber optics that go on the poles and underground meet at these big hubs. And obviously a lot of them are in other countries as well. But it's these data centers, and if I'm getting a little excited, that's the geek in me. I love going to the data centers. It's like my wife loves going shopping to like Neiman Marcus and all those Macy's. I love visiting our data center. It's just like a field trip for me. But these buildings are actually where cloud services live. These mission-critical, 24/7, 365 staffed buildings that are built to never, ever go down. And that's where the cloud is, buildings like these. So the main reason that all of a sudden putting things in the cloud makes sense is connectivity. So not only do data centers have amazing capacity and tons of fiber optic and really great pipes out to the internet, But today, in 2017, so do we. Only 20 years ago, in 1997, we were getting online with 28.8 modems, dialing up and hogging up a phone line. Now, just to put things in perspective, the average cable modem today is the one I have in my house, and I've got sort of the middle tier plan from the cable provider, is 2,000 times faster than that 28.8 modem. It's a 50 meg line. 2,000 times is just a little bit faster. Plus, it's on all the time. Everybody can use it, and it doesn't hog up our only phone line. In the last 15 years, the speed, the reliability, the affordability, and the availability of high-speed internet have grown tremendously. It was only 1999, 2000 that T1 was the big thing, and businesses were like excited if they can get a T1 line. And again, a cable modem, my cable modem is 30 times faster than a T1 and costs a 20th the price of what it did back then. Heck, even the 4G signal on my iPhone is actually a lot faster, more reliable, and more available than a T1 line was. So it's amazing how well connected this world has become and all the things that keep those connections alive. Now, as our computers and our devices have gotten more connected to the cloud and technology has progressed, it makes more sense to move things, move our services, move our data into this cloud. Kind of like banking, it always made sense to put your money in a bank, not under your mattress, because it was a lot safer there. But you had to write a check, you had to go to the bank to get cash out, you had to wait for your statement or look at your little bank book to see your balance. Today, there's a Chase ATM about every 45 feet in New York City. You've got online banking, online bill pay. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer, unless you've got something to hide. You guys are the lawyers, we'll leave that for another time. But banking just makes a lot of sense. You know that they're taking a lot better care of your money than you could. So tomorrow, as you probably guessed, is cloud. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, hey, we already do some stuff in the cloud, our email, our files, our time and billing, and you know what? That's great. I mean, there's so many amazing products out there that use the cloud that are better than your on-premise, whatever it might have been, counterpart could ever be. And that also means that you understand the cloud, you trust the cloud, you learned how it worked. But the law firm of tomorrow is doing much more than just putting some of their data and some of their applications in the cloud. The law firm of tomorrow has actually moved their entire IT infrastructure into the cloud. And when I say entire, I mean everything from the desktops to the servers, to the data storage, to the security. And they're using a service or a technology called desktop as a service. So the way I like to sum up desktop as a service is kind of like Netflix. Netflix, which I'm sure most of you, if you don't use it, you've probably heard of it, delivers your movies to any screen, anywhere, at any time. It could be a smart TV, could be an Apple TV, a laptop, an iPad, an iPhone, and they've gotten really, really good at it. So a desktop as a service streams an entire computer to any screen, anywhere, anytime. There's never any data actually stored locally. There's never any security or hardware or anything to worry about. That's all coming from the cloud. All you've got on your desk is a screen, keyboard, mouse, printer, scanner, webcam, whatever, input-output stuff. But desktop as a service takes that tower from the desk, takes those servers from a closet or a rack or, under the water cooler or something, and moves all of those to one of those data centers like that. Now, just a couple of quick facts about desktop as a service. Like I said, the desktop PC, the servers, all of that gets moved into the cloud. And why? Because those are the most critical pieces of any infrastructure. As much as you may have your time and billing or your email or a few other things in the cloud, that desktop is the amalgamation point where they all come together, where you may have your favorites, your bookmarks, your password management software, your plugins, if you're like me, you leave a couple of files on the desktop because that's where you remember to work on them. That's where everything comes together, and that's where you feel most comfortable working. So it takes these critical pieces and secures them and protects them in the cloud. Where that data center might be, like I said, these buildings, there's probably a couple of hundred, if not a few thousand of these, at least in the US alone. That always depends on a cloud provider. Every provider works a little differently. Some use public clouds, some use private clouds. Some, I'm guessing, have their quote-unquote cloud in the basement of their house using a cable modem. Probably not the best idea, but can't speak for everybody here. But depending on your provider, that data center can be anywhere. And how to get in is basically you log in from any screen with an internet connection, and your desktop appears. Like I said, just like Netflix, I actually started a movie yesterday on the plane. I was able to download it for offline use, finished it, watched a little bit more in my room last night, and then finished it on the treadmill this morning on my iPhone. But it was the same movie or the same TV show, just picking up from where I left off always. And when did all this come about with desktop as a service? So they tried it about 15 years ago. A company I was working, actually about 18 years ago, a company I was working at tried to deploy desktops as a service using Citrix, who's a huge company, but 16 years ago they weren't where they are today. And it didn't really work so well because the technology and the connectivity just wasn't there. It was really slow, it was really clunky, it just didn't feel great. A lot of the newer technologies for desktop as a service really came about around 4 years ago. And it got popular 2 years ago. And the real reason for that is that the technology, the computing power, the storage, things like solid state drives, if any of you have played around with those, fiber connectivity, everything has just gotten to a level that you can really reliably deliver a great feeling desktop from anywhere over an internet connection. And what does that mean to us, to the business owners? Mainly it's convenience. When you put something out there in the cloud, it becomes a service that you just log into and use, and you don't worry about it anymore. You trust your cloud provider, you know that they're in the business of delivering IT, of delivering cloud, and they're probably doing a lot better job with their own stuff, their own servers and data and hardware than they could ever do on remote boxes sitting out in everybody's offices, however many miles away. Everybody in the company all of a sudden works from anywhere. Whether they're physically in the office, or they're home, or they're in a Starbucks, or wherever they're at a client, wherever they might be, they're always working off the cloud. And it takes that term of the office and doesn't really limit it to the four walls or the space that's on your lease that you're paying for anymore. And I've just noticed lately, so many businesses, work from home used to be the exception to the rule. These days, it's almost becoming the norm. Now, because the desktops and the servers are in the cloud, it's the provider's responsibility to secure, to manage, to protect, to back them up, and obviously to support them. It becomes something that you don't think about hard drive crashes, blue screens, power supplies failing, or even theft. It's happened before that companies are robbed and somebody walks out with their desktops. All of a sudden, those desktops become almost like cable boxes. They connect your TV to your cable provider, but there's nothing actually on them. By the way, I keep saying we, not in the royal sense that, the royal we, and you guys, I'm actually part of this movement as well. Kind of like they used to have those commercials, the Hair Club for Men, where the guy goes, I'm not just the president, I'm also a client. Well, I'm obviously not part of the Hair Club for Men, or I shouldn't be advertising if I am. But we moved ourselves to the cloud, to desktop as a service about 2 years ago. And just this past weekend, when we had this whole snowpocalypse coming and New York City decides to shut down a day in advance just in case, well, it was just like, okay, so subways are closed, whoever can't get in, work from home. And that's what I did on Tuesday. Another thing this means, once you're in the cloud, is that you're no longer worrying about upgrades. Things like servers, running out of storage space, better backup systems, renewing Windows licensing or backup licensing or hardware warranties, they all become a thing of the past because that goes on to your provider. They're now doing all of that and you're just using it. Kind of like you don't think about what's going on over at Netflix and what are they doing to handle all these users and store all these new episodes of TV shows and movies. They're doing something and it works. And who could remember just 10 years ago, if you wanted to watch a movie at home, you were actually getting in the car, driving to Blockbuster, hoping they had whatever you wanted in stock, and then a few days later you had to make sure to rewind the tape or pay a couple $1 fine. It's amazing. So the law firm of Tamar, we'll leave it at that, they've taken things like their desktops, their file sharing, Windows applications, practice management, service support, backups, email, everything goes into the cloud. And the only thing they're left with at the firm is their internet connection, printers, users, and any devices like iPads. Everything else is in the cloud, it's fully managed, it's fully supported, and with that go capital expenditures. So 5 figures for a server with I don't even want to get into all the technical terms and lose you guys, they're gone because that's no longer your responsibility. Now, the good news about the law firm of tomorrow, there's still clients, there's still matters, there's still research, collaboration, and of course there's people. We haven't been replaced by cyborgs just yet. There is still some paper. You know, people have visions of a paperless office. Yeah, printers keep getting faster and faster and cheaper, and you know, you probably are generating paper, but as more and more things go digital, your information systems, your computers, your programs, and the data in them becomes more and more valuable. All the more reason you need to be more concerned about protecting it. Viruses, malware, they're not stopping anytime soon. Unfortunately, they've actually figured out ways to monetize these with things like CryptoLocker and all the variants they've had. Now that these viruses can be monetized, they're more popular than ever, and they're getting smart. I mean, I see some of these things that come through, they are crafty and they are creative. Because this is the future, and skies are green and gray, you know, skies are blue, grass is green, everything works beautifully. Like I said, there's no worry about a hard drive crashing, or losing a laptop, or a file getting deleted accidentally, or a blue screen, or a virus, or any of that. These systems in the cloud are really, really well protected. For employees, working from anywhere becomes a reality. Starbucks, home office, a client's office, traveling, and you're not limited when you work remotely. It's not that you've got your desktop with everything, and you've got your remote session, which is half the speed, or it has 2 or 3 applications, or it feels like you're on one of those satellite calls with Afghanistan with the news reporters from the battleground where they ask a question, and then they answer a question. When cloud is done right, it feels local, it feels real.
But doesn't that really require you to have, doesn't that all depend on the speed of your line at your office?
It doesn't, so I'll say this. In today's day and age, if you've got anything above 10 megabits, which is kind of, I don't even know if you can get as slow as 10 megabits anymore, 10 and up, you're good. The real issue when it comes into using desktop as a service or any streaming service, if anybody here have VoIP phones with like an 8x8 or a Ring Central, one of those companies? Okay, so one of the things that I've seen, we're not a voice company, but because every one of our clients uses phones, we always get involved in these situations. That's also, voice is a real-time application. And without getting into how the internet works, I've done that presentation as well, kind of a Willy Wonka style. The biggest issues in real time are latency and packet loss. Now, latency comes from from distance, how physically far you are from your data. So for example, we're here in Chicago now. To get from Chicago to our data center that I showed you there before in New York, about 800 miles or so, it takes 18 to 25 milliseconds. That's 18 to 25 1,000ths of a second. There are very few human beings on this planet who can notice that kind of a delay. Where you start to notice a delay on voice or real-time apps is about 100 to 150 milliseconds. New York to LA is about 80. So typically, as long as your cloud provider is based in the US, you're okay. Now, quality is also a big thing. If you're on a 20 megabit or a 50 megabit line, but you're sharing it with the whole office building, and people are doing YouTube and downloading movies and all sorts of stuff all day long, that might clog up the line, and you may get jitter, which is where it goes from 20 to 50 to 2 to 100 to all over the place. Or if you're on a bad Wi-Fi signal as well, that can affect the quality of your cloud experience or your voice call. So if you ever have a voice, that's probably either a really poor internet connection or a really poor Wi-Fi setup. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, but speed these days is no longer a concern. Again, pretty much anywhere in any modern country these days, speed is the least of the worries. So why wasn't this here 10 or 20 years ago, to look back a little bit? Well, up until the late 19th century, factories actually used to locate themselves near sources of power. For example, a factory would have to put themselves right on the riverbank so that they can have some sort of a big, somebody help me out here, turning wheel thingy.
Turbine.
Turbine, thank you. Big turbine to run a complex power system to power their machines. In the early 20th century, electricity was discovered and a way to distribute it over copper lines was created, and all of a sudden, these factories can go anywhere and just get their power from somebody else. Up until about 15 years ago, if you wanted to buy something and have it that day, we got in our cars and we drove to a store. And there was no price comparison or user reviews. You actually asked the salesperson, hey, which CD player or which whatever should I buy? I used to be one of those salesmen. I worked in an electronics store, and people would come in, ask me, what do I think of something? Is it a good price? Of course, it's the best price ever. It's actually on sale right now. And they take my word for it. Today, unfortunately, people in Best Buy and those kind of stores, it's just all they do is get the box from you or show it to you so you can then go on your phone and order it from Amazon. But 15 years ago, there was no same-day delivery or next-day Prime or any of that stuff. We were going to stores. Until, like I said, until 10 years ago, you wanted to watch a movie at home, you got in your car, you drove to Blockbuster. And as a business, if you wanted a phone system with voicemail, auto attendant, and all these cool features, you bought a PBX and stuck it in a closet somewhere. And like I said, if you wanted business IT, if you wanted your own email, your own file server, your own networked applications, you needed PCs, servers, networks, and IT companies to support them. And you put those within your four walls. But today, technology has changed all of this. Now, just like when you use FedEx or Con Ed or Verizon or whatever the local utility company is, you don't really know or care how FedEx gets the box from point A to point B, how Con Ed gets that 120 volts to the outlet in your wall, or how Verizon gets the LTE signal to your phone. All you know is that you pay them a monthly fee, they take care of it, and there's probably some problems going on their end from time to time, but they're fixing those before you, as the end customer, could actually notice what's going on. And the cloud is the same thing. The law firm of tomorrow does that with their IT. They put it in the cloud, the desktops, the servers, the applications, the security, the backups, the remote access, every little piece of it, and the users just log in, see their desktop exactly where they left off with exactly the programs that they left open, access it securely, leaving no data behind, and when they're done, they close out. And what this does for the law firm is it lets them actually focus on law, focus on clients, focus on building their businesses. Now, just so we're on the same page, moving to a system like this, a desktop as a service, it's not going to change your lives the next day. And it may not even have an obvious benefit anywhere in the near future. And by the obvious benefit, I'll compare it to something like a bike helmet. So, oops, where'd my slides go? So this was actually me about four years ago. Got hit by a car on my bike on a Friday morning in the summer. It's actually my first ride of the summer. Now, I'm not a big Instagram guy, but my wife said I had to post it on Instagram. So when I got to the hospital lying on the stretcher, my wife took a picture. That's my forehead, and that's my helmet. That's an obvious benefit. There is no doubt in my mind that if I didn't have that helmet on, I probably wouldn't be standing here today. And that's the one thing that I still do on Instagram every year is go online and post this every June, hoping that a couple people will buy a bike helmet for themselves and their kids. That's an immediate benefit. Something like cloud is kind of like getting vaccinated. You never know when you may come in contact with somebody who has whatever disease you got vaccinated against, and you're definitely not going to go say, oh, you have the flu, hey, let's hug because I just got a flu shot. You just know that, hey, you feel pretty good. And with things like desktop as a service, it could be the little things like, hey, we used to get blue screens. We used to have PC issues all the time. We don't have those. Or we haven't lost a file in really long. Or it could be something bigger, like what happened this weekend with the snow, with the snow in the Northeast, where I think pretty much everywhere from DC to Boston was shut down on Tuesday, but a lot of people just picked up and worked from wherever. So back to February 16th, 2016. As you probably guessed by now, why was Robert so cool, calm, and collected when he walked out of his office and emailed his whole staff? Well, just 2 months earlier, late 2015, he had moved his entire firm into Tomorrow and moved all his desktops and servers into the cloud. Now, Robert's a very forward-thinking guy. He loves technology. He buys every new gadget the day it comes out. But the reason he had done this, he's been a little reactive. 3 years earlier, his firm was hit by Hurricane Sandy. They're in Lower Manhattan. Their office I think their building was without power for about 4 days. Now, at that time, in late 2012, he already had his email in the cloud, and he had his time and billing software in the cloud. So they were able to be about 15 to 20% productive from home until their power got restored, and I think there was a little bit of damage to some of his equipment from an electrical surge, but it wasn't 100%. In this instance, for 4 days, most of his firm worked from home, and they were fully productive. Documents they had open, matters they were working on, communications they needed to do. Like I said, their entire desktop just appeared wherever they were. And that's why he walked out, nothing to worry about that day. And that's the law firm of tomorrow. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time and attention. Have a great rest of the show.
Questions?
If anybody has any questions, I am standing up here in case you need. Yes?
What size of firm do you think most benefit from desktop as a service? Or I guess what's the minimum size?
So,
Could you repeat the question, please?
Jen, what size firm would benefit from desktop as a service? I don't think there's really a question of size. I mean, there are firms, there are solos who are on desktop as a service. There are firms with 200, 300, 400 users. Now, what I think, the benefit for somebody like an under 20 is that sometimes as a small firm, it's hard to get the attention of a really good IT company to service you and deliver you the support that you need, because they may have some bigger clients that they care more about.
Amen.
And the difficulty of a 200 or 300 person firm may be that they're so demanding and they've got so many customizations, and for the larger firms, it may make sense to build their own desktop as a service environment, which is called VDI. So VDI means moving your desktop off your desk and onto a cloud. As a service means instead of doing it yourself, you're hiring somebody. So I know, I actually learned about this type of computing about 5 years ago because I have a few friends who work at JP Morgan and they were rolling it out for themselves. So there's really, it makes sense of all, I would say there's no size limit. Yes?
What kind of redundancy is built into the whole system of the cloud? I mean, if some catastrophic event happened, and I know if something really did happen that was terrible and blew up the cloud system where everything's held, I mean, I know we've got much bigger problems than that. We're worried about the cloud,
Right.
but what would happen? I mean,
So-
is this stuff stored in several different places, or?
So everyone is done a little differently. I mean, I can speak for our cloud, where our primary data center is in New York and our redundant facilities in Seattle. So yes, my worry is not that a nuclear bomb hits New York and our data center is leveled, and if that does happen, don't call me because I'm probably not going to be able to answer my phone anyway. But it's funny. A lot of the data center providers, the guys who own these big buildings, all they talk about is how they're 8-foot thick walls and concrete and 17 different security guards. That's not what takes down the cloud. What takes down the cloud is human error. For anybody who knows, Amazon was down about 2 weeks ago. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't it was human error. Somebody fat-fingered a command that accidentally shut down their whole data center or their whole storage system. So look, most providers, and I could tell you the redundancies that we've put in place, we've got all sorts of different redundant systems, backups and monitoring and everything. That's important, but I think what's more important is how well they maintain it, how well trained their people are, and how prepared they are if and when an oops happens. I hope that answers your question.
And how about protections from hacking? I mean,
So again,
cyber crime.
okay, everything is hackable. If the FBI and the CIA and those guys can get hacked, I'm sure they've got a lot better stuff than I have at least. Again, I can speak for our company. We've got multiple layers of defense, both inbound and outbound, but we've also got really, really good offline and offsite backups. So if and when something were to somehow get hacked, and we've got like two-factor and all these other things, but if somebody did somehow get in, at the very least, we have your data. They can't destroy your data. And again, it's a question for each client of ours. Like we have some clients who want two-factor authentication, and we offer it. We don't even charge for it. So that's when I go to log in, I've got a code that changes every 30 seconds on my phone. Some clients don't want that. They feel it's an inconvenience. But again, it's being prepared for the hack. It's not thinking that you're impenetrable.
Just like most of us use Dropbox, I guess most lawyers use Dropbox.
Okay.
And basically, does Dropbox keep just one file?
So I see the fellow behind you shaking his head. Okay, so I've had a lot of experience with Dropbox, but there's a lot of other questions. So if you don't mind, hang out. No, it's okay. Let's chat in a few minutes offline, but I'll tell you all I know about Dropbox. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if you can just explain something practical about your offering. So let's say that you want to take my office and provide it back to me as a service. You take my software whatever it is that I'm actually using not in the cloud, you move it into your boxes, you support it, and then you port it back to me and I can access it wherever I am. Is that the idea?
Basically, yeah. That's exactly it. So our offering is a Windows desktop with all your standard Microsoft, Office and those applications, and then we take any Windows application, whether it's an on-prem application like a Tabs or a World Docs or a Time Matters, or any cloud application, and we run that within our cloud environment for you, and you access it, and it feels just like a PC, but it's actually all streaming out of a cloud.
So the difference is that any updates to that specific software is done on your server farm.
Correct.
And everything else you take care of. You take care of the backup, you take care of the server updates, you take care of all those things.
Correct.
So how do we make sure that we meet any regulatory requirements that we have as lawyers about the safety of the data?
So that's part of our onboarding process, is to go over compliance and regulatory. I'm proud to say that we've always met all the technical requirements of any regulatory or ethics requirements that we've been brought. Where we can't help is the end, sort of the user requirements of what. Very often, you can't put certain types of data into certain applications. That's beyond our control. But the technical requirements, we've always met them. Our facilities are certified SSAE 16, SOC 2. As well, we've undergone several different types of audits to make sure that we are compliant and we're doing everything, dotting our I's, crossing our T's. Yes, sorry, in the back?
What do you think about the use of MPLS within a cloud environment?
So MPLS, just okay, what do I think about the use of MPLS? So MPLS is a private network where, the normal way that you reach your cloud is you've got an internet connection from a Comcast or a Verizon or whomever, and I've got an internet connection from somebody, and those, again, I'm not going to get into how the internet works, but we ride the public internet to make a secure connection. MPLS means you make a private connection up to your carrier. So, and there are some advantages to a private connection, such as performance and quality. So we actually explored MPLS a lot, and we offer it as an option. We have a sort of a hybrid model where it's a quality of service end-to-end from the provider. We offer it, but for the most part, our product, if you have a quality connection and enough bandwidth, which is readily available anywhere in the US, we've actually found that it's not necessary. If you're going to run voice over that line as well, then we require MPLS, and we can do we can do QoS and segment the bandwidth. Problem is MPLS is a more complex product to support, and a lot of local IT shops aren't able to set up the right kind of failover with MPLS. So we have one provider that we have worked with, but it introduces some complexities, and we found other ways around it where you don't necessarily need it. Yes, sir.
Can you give us some sense of what the relative expenses, you're eliminating some capital expenditures,
Right.
presumably you're replacing it with some sort of monthly subscription
Right.
or other fee-based, is there a savings, and what kind of a timetable is there before you reach the
Sure.
cutover point to savings?
So what you're replacing are you're replacing CapEx, such as hardware, servers, desktops, software, and any other ancillary systems you may purchase. You're also replacing OpEx for things like software subscriptions like antivirus or backup, and any IT support services that you're paying as well. You're replacing it with a fee of, we'll say, in the range of $150 to $200 a month per user, and that includes a lot of different things. The ROI varies per firm. If you're a firm where you're 20 people and one of the associates is also really good with computers, so he does it, you're not eliminating an IT support cost. Or if you like to keep your desktops for 7 years or 10 years until the day that they die, again, it's hard to compete with something like that. But if you pay for proper managed services and you pay for the right kinds of backups and you renew your software, you don't buy a Microsoft Office key on eBay and share it all around, and you replace your desktops every 2 or 3 years, there's usually a really good ROI. We've got a whole Excel spreadsheet that helps companies figure out what that is and when it is.
And in the CapEx side, do you still have a thin client box that you have to use, or is that?
Yes and no. So we provide thin clients, which is a little box like this. So this is not a computer that I threw in the dryer and shrunk it. This is almost like a cable box. It's got, there's no data that sits on it. This just gets your monitor, your keyboard, your speakers, whatever it is. It gets those devices to the internet without requiring a computer. So this is what I have sitting on my desk to log into BoxTop, but there's no data actually on it. So when I'm not at my desk, I use a laptop, I use a Mac, I can actually use my iPhone. It's just really small and hard to see everything on it, but a few times it's come in handy. So we do provide these thin clients because they work really well and there's nothing to break on them, but you don't need them, you can use anything.
What's the relative expense of something like that to, mid-tier Dell business desktop?
So these cost, I'll tell you, these cost us $250 a pop. We provide it as part of the service. Because if we didn't provide this, then you'd have your PC, and once in a while you get a virus, you get something, and all of a sudden you can't get into BoxTop because of your computer. But this is, for us, this is included. Some providers sell them, some tell you buy whatever you want. It's open. I saw a hand up.
So on your desk, you have that, plus a monitor or two monitors hooked to it,
Yes.
and a wireless keyboard and mouse.
I have on my desk, I have one of these. I had two monitors, but it's two in my face, so I got down to one. Wireless keyboard and mouse, speaker, webcam, printer.
Scan.
No, I actually don't. I use the scanner out in the hallway. I used to have one of those little Brother label printers as well. I mean, any peripheral. I mean, some of our people do have personal scanners, but yeah, everything plugs into here. You can take a look at it. It's got double monitor, a whole bunch of USB ports, and everything else on it.
Are you able to do any kind of Dragon natural voice stuff?
Yes. Yeah, we have a few people who've done Dragon or do Dragon with it. There's certain microphones that for whatever reason just don't play well with these, but like we have, I think, 10 or 15 that we know work fine.
So the Dragon software sets in the cloud.
Correct.
Okay.
And you plug in your microphone and your voice goes, and look, instead of your voice going into a tower on your desk, it just travels over your internet to a computer in the cloud. Yes?
So just to pick up on that, if I want to use Dragon, do I have to buy the software and upload it? And if that's the case, I'm still responsible for maintenance and upgrades? How does that work?
So, yes, you still have to buy whatever software you want to use. I mean, you could say upload it. It doesn't feel like uploading. These days, most people don't give you an actual CD anyway. You download the software. So you would buy it, you would download it, it would get installed onto your cloud desktop or your cloud server, and it would function just like normal. And when new versions are available, that's up to you if you want to keep your maintenance current and upgrade to the new version or just stick with what works. There are certain programs that we provide, like Microsoft Office, Adobe Acrobat, all the security stuff that you don't even see there. But other than that, we're application agnostic. We don't want to say if you use our system, you use this time and billing and this case management. If it's Windows, or even if it's cloud, we play well with it. Yes?
What about offline accessibility, right? Because as a service, right, everything it's virtualized, right? You're going
Yes.
to the cloud. So
Right.
what about the times when I know I'm going into a situation where I can't rely on a network because maybe it's somebody else's public network?
Right. So we have an offline component. It lets you have either your personal files, like your My Documents, or pieces of your public drive. I mean, technically, you could put your entire public shared drive as long as your laptop's hard drive is big enough, but it will synchronize that for offline use. You go offline, use your laptop, use Outlook, obviously works offline, and then when you connect back, it syncs up. Now, the only consideration that I warn everybody about with that is one of the nice things about desktop as a service, with forgetting the offline for a minute, your data is always secure in the cloud. So I'm working from home on Tuesday, and I'm working, and then I'm done. I close it out. Now my 4-year-old comes up, no, 6 now actually. My 6-year-old comes in the computer, and I don't have to worry about him accidentally touching any of my stuff. If you're going to use one of these applications, just keep in mind your data is now leaving the cloud. So make sure you've got local encryption and whatever else set on your laptop. But we fully support that. When we built our DAS platform, DAS Desktop as a Service, we've been doing managed IT for 16 years already, so a lot of the challenges that people have brought up to us are things that we actually thought of already, and we've got those solutions inbuilt. But it's a good question, and look, I was on the plane over here, and I had Wi-Fi, but it was not good Wi-Fi, so that was one of the reasons, one of the cases where I was using offline. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for the attention. I hope I wasn't too boring.